clap.
Oh, we're going.
That's our clapper.
We're going.
We're ready to go.
Okay, we need to buy you one, man.
Seriously.
We should.
Just
Come
a little
on.
one.
We can get one.
I'll have Natalie order one off of B&H. We'll be good to go.
Welcome to 7 Points, a podcast produced by the Arizona Department of Public Safety, where we talk to different individuals who make our department so great. Whether a state trooper or civilian support staff, every employee has a unique story and path they took to get here. 7 Points asks guests 7 specific questions to give listeners insight into what it means to work here and to be a part of the law enforcement family.
All right. Well, this is our first episode of the 7 Points podcast put on by the Arizona Department of Public Safety. I am Sergeant Eric Andrews, the Public Information Supervisor for our agency. Co-host with me is Detective Sherrod Harris. And then we also have our Executive Producer Extraordinaire, Public Information Manager, Warren Trent. And today, being our first episode, we thought it was going to be most appropriate to interview our fearless leader of our agency and our department, the wonderful Colonel Jeff Glover. So thank you, sir, for being here with us.
Thank you for the invite, guys. It's truly an honor to be your first interview. I know that you guys did a test run, though, with the legend Tony Mapp.
That's true.
So you can't discount that. The guy, I hope not to be boring, because that guy is quite the storyteller.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
He had a couple.
He is something else.
He's got the record for longest test episode.
Yes.
So we'll see if you surpass that or not. So
No pressure. But
Probably not going to get anywhere close.
well, let's just dive right in. For our guests being our first episode, we like to ask all of our guests that are seven specific questions. Our badge has 7 points, as you see on the back wall there. So the podcast, we want it to be 7 points. Now, you, sir, since you haven't been at DPS for that long, this hasn't been your career at DPS, we've altered the questions a little bit, so everybody else will get some different ones. But the first one is still kind of the same as everybody else's. Where'd you grow up? How did you get into policing?
So I grew up originally being from Compton, California, and was a split-time kid between Compton and Phoenix. So I had family in both places. I was raised by both sets of grandparents. And so I would split time going from Compton to out here, and it ultimately ended up doing most of my schooling here in the Maryville area in Phoenix. It was a little bit safer environment. It was a little crazy back in California. But, all in all, just enjoyed really having the best of both worlds and growing up and experiencing life in both places. Very stark contrast between the two. But, a lot of life lessons, though, along the way. So really enjoyed it.
So did you go to high school out here?
I did.
What high school did you go to?
I went to Trevor Brown.
Trevor Brown, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
on the west side. That's right.
Oh,
so after high school, what did you go to college here or out of town or?
So I briefly went back to California. Was going to start college out there, and what ended up taking place was I went back and started living out there for a little bit, and found the beach and quite a few girls, and my dad said, "Hey, it's time for you to probably go back to Arizona so you can focus."
Right.
Not paying for you to hang out at the beach all day.
Right.
So I came back to Arizona.
That's awesome.
I ended up going to GCC, was walking on to play basketball over there. Ended up with an injury and sort of like refocused myself on just, what am I going to do with the long-term, career, and what I'm not that I was going to like play for the Suns or anything like that one day. Like I didn't have it like that. I was good though.
Oh,
was
of
good.
course. Yeah, no
Absolutely.
doubts here.
Oh yeah.
I
can
told
see that.
Tony the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I ended up over at GCC, and I started working with the city of Phoenix. And when I started working with the city of Phoenix, I initially, the first couple of months was with Parks and Recreation. They ended up absorbing the position, though, into a grant program called Juvenile Diversion Officer Program, working with Maryville, with Phoenix PD out of Maryville. So I ended up shifting over into that program, and it was after a conversation with the bosses and everything, and they're like, hey, we're making some changes and everything. How do you feel about being able to work with the police? And I'm like, well, I know exactly how to really respond to that. And they're like, well, you would work, in this position, and, here's what it entails. And really it was about being able to do some of the statistical analysis of the juveniles that were coming in and getting some of the reporting done.
Right.
If they're, gang affiliated, things of that nature, documenting, like what their affiliations are, who they're, hanging out with, what gang, who, were they with at the time when they were out, past curfew violation. Because it was really geared in the early 90s. It was geared towards, being able to bring these kids in for curfew violations, getting them off the street, and then hopefully getting them back connected into some services that were going to get them, moving in the right direction in their life.
Right.
So that's sort of how that all started for me. And I was working with Phoenix PD. And like I said, I got absorbed into that program. And so they were like, hey, this is great. This is a young guy who gets it and understands that culture and knows these, the issues that we have with these gangs here.
Right.
Most of these kids are coming from LA, which is where I was from. So I was able to connect with them. And so they loved having me there. Sometimes I wouldn't have a staff shirt on. I was just sort of like blending in with some of the kids. We cleared a lot of cases.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. It was my first UC role.
Right.
And so I was able to, to really learn about, the agency and get a good feel for what police officers do, because at that point I didn't have bad experiences, with police, but, it was definitely not on my top 10 things to do in my career and with my life. So I really fell into this whole thing by falling in love with the fact that I was surrounded by really good people that were really trying to do great things in the lives of these young kids. And I thought that was really like a noble thing. And so I was like, man, this is actually pretty cool. I wouldn't have guessed that I would have been attracted to law enforcement.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what like steered me in that direction, was that interaction and being able to be around those guys.
So that helps us understand kind of your path to law enforcement. So then kind of what happened, when was that decision like, hey, I'm going to go for this, I'm going to do this? Like, was it, or how was that?
Yeah, so after about 4 years working in that program, I started, looking at, okay, well, what are some agencies I can start looking at testing for and everything. And, I was thinking that, okay, I'll probably just go ahead and try to get on with Phoenix since I'm already here, but I need to at least take a test run.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the process. The guys have been all telling me about it and everything. And when you're only like 21, 22, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the best way of approaching this? And somebody said, hey, just take a test run, go to an agency and just take the test and everything.
Yeah.
So I went over to Mesa, and they had the process going and everything. I show up and I take the test and I get in. Like right away.
Just like that.
Just like that. Wow.
Yeah, just like that.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
I actually sort of breezed through the process and everything, and I'm thinking the whole time, like, man, like this is cool, but this wasn't the agency I intended to get on with.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give it a shot. Well, I get on, and next thing you know, I get through the academy, and then I'm way out in Superstition, and this is in the 90s, and I'm just like,
There's nothing out there.
Right.
where there's coyotes.
Right. Not exactly the police work you were thinking.
Not exactly what I was thinking. Great agency,
Yeah.
fantastic people. It just wasn't the fit that I was looking for. So then I looked to go back over to Phoenix because I've already gone through the academy. So I reach out and my buddies are all there, and I worked with quite a few people in that time frame over in Phoenix because it was a rotational deal for those guys. So they would spend at least 2 months in that JDO program. All the officers out of the Maryville station, especially if they were newer, they would spend about 2 months and then they would rotate out. So I got to know everybody out of the 800 district. And while I was there, I had documented over 6,000 gang members during that time.
6,000?
6,000.
Wow.
Jiminy Christmas.
Yeah,
Wow.
I would keep a count and everything and do all the statistics.
We won't tell that to any of our Get 'em detectives now. I don't want to rub it in or anything.
I'm just saying, it was funny because when I go to and put in for Phoenix was like, Mesa had broke off from our academy, so we won't accept your certification. I'm like, it's the same certification. What are you talking about? And they were like, well, we're not taking, laterals from Mesa, Like, oh, okay. So I had a buddy that was over in Tempe, and he was like, hey, man, you need to come over here and do a ride along. Check it out. This is awesome, And so, first thing I do is I ended up getting scheduled for a ride along, and I end up, going over, of course, Mill Avenue. I mean, it's like nothing but excitement and nonstop action. So they had me hooked from there. So I ended up.
Eric, is that thing still going?
I started.
Yeah. So I ended up, getting on with Tempe. Tempe picked me up right away. So I get on with Tempe, and and I pretty much do the bulk majority of my career with the city of Tempe. But all in all, it was like one of those things where it was never really, planned out or anything. It just sort of organically happened, and it just turned out to be a really good fit for me for my career.
Absolutely.
Well, that's right, because we first met when you were the PIO at Tempe. I was working on the assignment desk here at Arizona's Family, and I think I would call you up for information.
Yep.
And it was Jeff Glover. Oh, hey, how you doing? I'm Warren Trent.
No, you cannot have that information.
Right, exactly.
Oh man, foiled again.
Please submit a public records
Right,
request.
right.
For that.
That's right.
So in other words, you're
but-
used to getting the no from him then.
No, but he was always nice about it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
No, I can not say anything. It was not a bad experience at all. It was positive.
Good. So you've already kind of just like your career, I guess. You're naturally answering our questions, which is great. So we cover why policing, basically, and you've talked a little bit about how you ended up at Tempe Police Department. Tell us some of because the next question we would normally ask is, what's your favorite spot you've been at DPS? Well, we'll modify it a little bit. What was your favorite spot or job title while you were at Tempe Police Department?
Man, I held a lot of different positions in Tempe, and I had a lot of good times there. So it's hard to pick any one, but I think that working in the Tempe Crime Prevention Unit was probably one of the highlights as a detective over there, mostly because it's like you're sort of like the jack of all trades and master of none. I mean, everything gets thrown at you. Yeah. So it's like any of the weirdest things that you could possibly think of is all thrown on crime prevention. And at the time, during that time, the crime prevention unit was also like the threat mitigation was like, it was like you had to do everything because there was no threat mitigation really in existence. You were that before that whole thing really formed in law enforcement. And so, all the security planning, going out and doing assessments at businesses, doing, dignitary protection when you'd have somebody that would, that was famous that was either in town or whether it be, different, people that, foreign dignitaries that would come into the city. So you did a lot of these different things and had opportunities to really like get involved in so much across the entire, agency just from that one position. So you did a lot of different things that, whether the city manager or the mayor, like called on for like special services, it was through that unit. And so you would be involved in everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Eric and I have talked about that a lot as our careers have kind of mirrored each other. We obviously went to the academy together and have just kind of mirrored each other ever since. But one of our favorite spots were those CI unit, the criminal investigations units that literally caught everything.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, if there's not a specific person that takes this kind of case, it's coming to us. So everything from, a threat against a political official and things like that. It's cool because, like you said, you interact with every other department within the agency, other departments,
right?
Other state agencies. I worked with, economic security and did a bunch of fraud cases with them. And it's just cool to get to know those people and really see where they come from and what they value in their jobs, and that we're actually all pretty similar in what we're trying to do. So, that's a great experience. That's cool.
Yeah, you get to just problem solve.
Yep.
You're spending most of your day strategically planning on how to solve the next problem. And it's a pretty cool experience.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that 100%.
So now, were you in that position as an officer detective or as a supervisor?
Officer detective, and then I became the supervisor of that group for a short stint because they didn't have a place to put me at the time when I promoted. It was, sort of like promotion in place. The supervisor had done 34, 35 years and was on his way out the door. And so I was filling in as a supervisor until I finally got slotted into my midnight assignment.
Good.
So as a supervisor, then kind of the same question. As a supervisor, as you started to go through the ranks of the agency at Tempe, what was your favorite role as a supervisor?
Man, as a supervisor, probably training. Probably a training bureau as a lieutenant at the time, where you're impacting and you're able to, really assist with the development and growth of people, seeing them do their best and everything. To me, that's like very rewarding. So I really took, being in that training unit to be something that was, really an honor to be a part of, because you're really helping mold and shape people to be the best that they can be. And it's like a lot of the folks that I worked with that are there now, that are still there, some of them are commanders, assistant chief, or, they're all, like have grown and developed and everything. And it's incredible to be able to see that.
So you initially retired from Tempe and they brought you back as chief then.
Yeah, man.
Bamboozled you.
Drug me right back in, man.
Stiff-armed you.
Yeah.
You're never really out.
No.
You thought he was.
Thought I was,
Right.
yeah.
So I know this isn't one of our questions, but kind of still along the same lines, how was that, since that was your first role as leading an agency before you came over to us, what was that like, leading the agency that, not only leading any agency, but the agency that you grew up in? How was that?
It was really cool. I really appreciated the fact that they had that kind of trust in me to call me out of retirement, which I was comfortably happy in retirement, to come back and lead the agency. The agency had been through the George Floyd turmoil just like everybody else. And so there was a lot of issues that were, needed to really be addressed and fleshed out and everything. That, the agency is a great agency. The city's a great city. But a lot of people were just hurting, after that whole debacle. And then you had the protests and the constant, stress and trauma, I think, that everybody was going through. And, people talk about, the trauma of what's going on out in our communities, but, you have trauma that's going on in your agency too. And so I got an opportunity to come back and be able to help be a part of the solution and fixing some of those problems that they had internally, as well as the external piece of being able to address community concerns about how people were being treated and how things were being done. And so being able to have that opportunity to go back was it was fantastic, but it was also a huge challenge because it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to be a prophet in your own land, is what they call that.
Oh yeah.
Especially when you've spent your career there. You left. I was only gone for like 6 months before I got the phone call to come back.
Barely
And-
got a vacation in.
Yeah, I called it a sabbatical. Which I appreciated because it was like almost like a fresh recharge of the batteries when I went back. And really it was good because the agency, like I said, it's filled with a lot of talented, really good people. It was just a matter of trying to get things coordinated to where everybody was basically on the same sheet of music, and that we're doing all the things that really isn't aligned with the city management philosophy. And I understood it because I had worked with the city management in those various roles that I had talked about. I had already had a great understanding of it, and that's the reason why they called me, is because they knew that, I had that, that knowledge of the internal process that the city goes through and the internal workings of what it took to be able to actually manage the department.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you had a huge advantage knowing the internal, how do I say it, the ambiance, the feeling of the department, if you will.
Yeah.
And knowing the people that are there. I say this all the time to people when they have questions about stuff. I'm like, listen, 99.9% of every officer that gets in this job got into it for all the right reasons.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's just a matter of we're just creatures of habit, and so we're just doing it the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
May not be the right way, but that's just the way we've always done it. And it's just breaking that in. And I feel like I know that if it was somebody that I had worked with before, and it's like, oh yeah, I know that guy. Yeah. Oh yeah, you're right. We should do it that way. You know what I mean? I'm sure that helped you out a lot. So.
Yeah, it did. In some aspects it did, because it's, it does when you have somebody that, and I spent a long time in the field. Like I did operational stuff. So it was, a lot of my time wasn't spent just behind the desk. It was actually out in the field with the guys. And so I understood, sort of where they were coming from and some of the concerns. And, I was able to, help to coordinate some things that allowed for them to have more of a voice in terms of just like being able to put together like employee advisory groups and really getting some feedback and trying to address sort of like systemic cultural issues that we had within the organization that I understood had always been there.
Right.
And that's always a challenge. I mean, the thing is that, it's also setting the expectations that, with the people that are there to understand that, look, understand we're, none of this stuff changes overnight. It took decades. It took decades for us to mess this up.
Yep. I mean, seriously.
So give a little bit of grace and a little bit of time, and we'll work together on trying to chart a new course, because, what things may look like a couple years from now, it's all dependent upon what feedback you provide and how we actually map things out.
Yeah. Excellent. So, moving on from that, tell us as much as you can, because I don't know how the process goes and how much of it's like, we don't talk about that. But the process of being nominated by the governor, what that was like. I mean, I don't know. Is there a bunch of interviews? I don't even know. That's what I mean. So that's why we asked, like, what was it like being nominated and then coming over to DPS, the first days you walk in the office? Like, walk us through that.
Yeah, so very interesting process. Had never been through anything like that. I mean, it's a little bit different. You're talking about state level. It's the governor, and there was community members that kept asking me about the fact that hey, DPS may come open. It's a new governor. What is your interest? And I'm like, I'm just trying to deal with what I got over here, man. I don't know what you
They
guys are talking about.
just sucked me back into Tempe.
Right. Yeah. And at that point, I've been there for about 2.5 years, and still working away, and I'm focused on what I'm doing. But I did have quite a few community members and some folks that I think were doing the assessment of who was being nominated had reached out to me about gauging my interest, and I was like, Well, I hadn't really considered it. I was like, DPS is a phenomenal organization. So, I appreciate the fact that, people are, talking about, me being a part of the organization or, considering putting in. But I was like, I don't know that I'm needed. I was like, they already, I haven't seen anything happen with the current director. And, full disclosure, like, we're friends.
Right.
So I have a great relationship with him. So I don't know, like, what the deal is. And then finally, I did get contacted by a community member that said, hey, not for nothing, but, that, you should just throw your name in the hat and consider it because I don't know what direction things are going. We don't know what, this is going to look like, but at least give it some consideration. Yeah. So I went ahead and submitted my name and everything, but then what I did was I had called Director Silbert up and said, hey, just FYI, this is what I'm doing. Because, we've been friends a long time.
Right,
I'm not going to go behind your back or anything. And it's like, I've been asked, I'm going to go ahead and submit my name, but I want to make sure that you knew that. And he appreciated it and everything. And so we talked about it and talked about the agency and had a very long discussion about some of the things that had been done and accomplished and everything during his tenure. And so I really appreciate, his support because he was very supportive of me. And I ended up submitting and I ended up getting contacted. And so next thing you know, I'm coming in for an interview. And I'll just say this, just to cut to the chase, there's a series of interviews.
I figured as much.
It was a lot of interviews.
Yeah, right.
So it wasn't like it was like, hey, yeah, we're just, come in for this one interview and, oh, yeah, you're good. It was like, oh, my God, another interview? So I went through this whole series of interviews until finally I was, interviewed by the governor. And apparently it went well.
Yeah.
So I ended up selected.
We're glad it went well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And, and then the whole confirmation process, was very interesting, just having to really, you're trying to game plan for anything and everything that would come up from whether it be background or, from your other agency, your philosophy, anything and everything. And it's difficult to really plan for that because you don't know where they're gonna, take questions and where they're formulating some of their ideas from about you or opinions because you don't know who they're talking to. So it's like, it's like, okay, well, just prepare for everything. Yeah. And I'll tell you, Blaze Baggs, when he was here, was phenomenal. He helped really just get me prepared for the process and just sort of did these mock interviews going through every step of the way, and he would throw different curveballs out there. It's just
nice.
All kinds of strange stuff. And he's like, I'm just doing it just to do it. I just want to see your reaction.
Nice. Yeah, it's something that police officers are a little bit familiar with. Even just to get hired in the first place, it's such a unique process in the world, even in the corporate world. I worked in the corporate world, and I never came anywhere close to a process like becoming a police officer. Just the amount of information they want, but they don't get into my philosophy on life. They don't get into even my political leanings or anything like that. There's nothing. Whereas a position like that, there's potential that they're going to drill down on all sorts of, ideas and things. So
completely under the microscope.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I probably wouldn't do it.
It's a good thing I'm a boring guy.
Right. Sure. Yeah, we can tell, real boring.
So now you get here, you're here, you've been here for coming up on 2 years now. What's your favorite part about this agency? What do you see that you go, that's awesome?
The people. It always comes down to people for me. I'm very much a people-oriented person. I just enjoy being able to talk to people and really get to understand, know, and get honest feedback from different people in the organization because to me, it's the people, obviously, that make this whole thing work. And, the traditions, some of the different things that the DPS employees, just, they talk about it from a professionalism standpoint, but it's also a sense of pride, and I love that because, you could go around, really, being Eeyore and hating the agency and things, but a lot of people take so much pride in their job and in the work that they do, that is what I really love about being here, is that people really enjoy the work that they're doing. Now they may complain about other things or whatever, but they really enjoy being a DPS employee, and so I think that is really meaningful, and that helps actually energize me, because when I hear people talk about certain aspects of their job, I'm always looking for, okay, how do we make it better? How do we make this thing better for you, for everybody?
Right.
Like, what can we do to make sure that we're investing in you, investing in your development, investing in the agency to make this agency the best that it can be? I mean, the goal is to be, best in the nation, right? I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's, I take that and I actually really do take all of that to heart. So when I'm hearing from people, if I hear something that is concerning, then I'm asking questions about it, because I want to make sure that everybody is getting what they actually need. Early on in my career in Tempe, and I've talked about this before, went through some rocky, turbulent times, and saw a lot of things, experienced a lot of things, was a part of a lot of things that did not go very well, and and people were not always treated the way that they should have been treated. And we are our own worst enemy in law enforcement sometimes.
Amen.
Where we will do things where it is literally eat your own, and I cannot stand that.
Yeah.
So for me, I've always been about what can we do to make sure that the employees are being treated well. It's almost like performance athletes. If you're investing in the athlete and you're actually providing that athlete with enough resources to be able to excel, then they're going to actually go out there and perform at a very high level.
Yeah.
And they're going to go out there and win a championship.
Yep.
And that's what it's all about, you know?
Enabling success.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So you're happy here. You like what you're doing.
Yep.
You've got, I don't want to say 2 years left, because who knows what's going to happen in the future. But
Right.
we know you've got at least 2 years still
Yes.
With our current governor. What do you see for DPS in this next 2 years? What do you see coming for us?
So I think that, we're charting out a course or a path of being able to really holistically try to figure out best ways of improvement, continuous employee improvement. I have been preaching ever since I came in the door about investing in our employees. And so I'm trying to do that in various different ways of making sure that we, really take the time to not only digest some of the things that are going on with the employee groups, but also like what actionable steps are we taking to actually implement, processes, things that are going to actually motivate us to ensure that they're getting what's needed for them to be successful. So over the next couple of years, there's definitely going to be a heavy investment in technology, as there already has been since I've gotten here, is that, that's part of like the wave of the future, because we've, committed to the hiring task force, right? And so I've doubled down on that, and I've been keeping that group together to continuously do this. But we know that, from looking at other agencies across the country, everybody is struggling with their hiring and recruitment. And we'll still continue to do that. But at the same time, we've got to do something that's going to take some of the stress and burnout off of the employee. So some of that, it comes back to how do we effectively streamline process? How do we implement technology to help fill in gaps? Not taking away jobs or anything. It's just that can't do everything.
Yep.
You know, the responsibilities over the years that we've all been sort of like have basically pushed on us as law enforcement is beyond the scope of just like anything that I ever could imagine from the 90s to
No
now.
comment.
Right? But it's true. It's like you think
Absolutely.
about the scope of our job
Yeah.
now. It's like, man, like way back when I wouldn't have even thought that we'd be doing some of the things that we're involved in now. And so because we are, you know, so stretched thin, it's about being able to figure out how do we fill in gaps? How do we make the job a little bit more easier and a little bit more palatable for the people that are here while trying to bring in new employees into sort of a new shifting culture and environment, because we are definitely in a technology age. So it's, you know, people are more savvy to that, and that new generation is going to keep continuing taking it a step further.
Yeah, Eric and I were actually just talking about this before you all arrived, about our drone program and how really, especially in the state, it's by and far probably the biggest, at least for sure in Arizona. I haven't heard about much around surrounding states. Usually I do, but you know, we have a bunch of drones and we have a bunch of people that are trained, and that to me is what DPS is all about, right? Is pushing that, making sure that we're at the forefront of that.
Yeah.
Especially as our job is as a support agency. I know a lot of guys don't like hearing that or admitting that, but that's the way it is, right?
It is.
And I love that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, if we have the tools and, to your point, the technology to do that, let's do it and let's be the best at it. So
Absolutely. The only other place that I've seen where they've implemented technology like that for like with drones and, you know, the you know, having a full like almost like a fleet is Chula Vista in that San Diego County area in California. They're utilizing them as first responders.
Oh, nice.
So they'll get out there and assess the situation first by utilizing the drone, feedback the information to the patrol unit, and they're getting more involvement where they're having the surveillance sort of like happen like right up front to be able to provide more detailed information, so that way you can strategically, you know, plan your encounter on how you're going into a call for service.
Which, as any, you know, street patrol officer will know, is that's the scariest part of the job, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what you're driving up to. You don't know what you're walking into. So that's awesome, actually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's most of our questions, but the last one that we always like to ask everybody is, normally what we want to ask is, give us that trooper tale, that funny or embarrassing story about some point in your career. For you, you haven't been a trooper that long, so maybe you have a Tempe tale instead of a trooper tale. But
Yeah. Man,
This ought to be good.
so I got one. I mean, you know, I try to PG it down a little bit because it's way out
That's
there,
funny.
man.
Tony, again, going back to Tony Mapp, he said the same thing.
So I go out on a call for service. I am an officer in the field. I'm working midnights. Most of my career, I worked midnights. I enjoy working the night shift. That was
where it's
my
at.
that was my thing. I wanted the action. I enjoy working nights, and I get called to the Country Inn Suites. It's off of I-10 and Elliott at the time, and it's not even my beat area, but I'm filling in where somebody else was off and everything. So I've been, you know, taking calls in that particular area, because usually I would always work that Phoenix border right there off of Baseline and 48th down to the Broadway where the townies were and everything. 'Cause a lot of shootings and stuff, a lot of fun, and I end up going to this call, and it's like the manager's calling because they think that there is a homicide that's happened in one of the hotel rooms.
Uh-oh.
And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, well, let me go and check this out. And, you know, they don't know. And I tell, they send a backup unit and everything, but they're like, hey, there's nobody in the room. It's completely vacant. And I was like, hey, let me assess and I'll call for any backup that's needed or whatever. I'll figure it out. I get over there, and she's showing me the room. She opens up the door, and she's like, I don't know what's going on. Here's some information that I had from the person who essentially had, booked this room and everything. And, the cleaning staff comes in to clean up, and it's the first thing in the morning. And they're like, there's blood all over the place. And it looks like it's been ransacked. Like somebody had a big knockdown, throw down fight in the room. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I walk in and I'm like, whoa, okay. So there's a big pool of blood in the bed. The blankets and everything's are off, and it's just the sheets. And so there's blood all over the bed. I'm looking around on the floor, and there's blood trails and everything. And I'm like, oh, okay, we may actually have something legit here. And there's a big pool of blood that's in the bathroom, but there's no shower curtains. And I'm like, okay, we got a yeah, exactly. We got a problem.
Right.
There's a problem. Okay, this is not good. Call a supervisor and everything. I'm already like, okay, well, man, you call for the supervisor, secure the scene and everything, get another unit over, start having some units say, hey, can you guys check the trash cans and everything? Start canvassing, because we probably got somebody that was murdered in the room and the body got moved. And so as we're going through this whole process,
only a cop would laugh at that point in the story. You know what I mean?
Oh, it gets better. It gets better. I eventually, I get everybody out there, and eventually CI gets out there, and I was able to go into a few different databases. I couldn't find, for whatever reason, we couldn't find the information for this guy, right? And I was able to get into some databases and everything, and found out that Phoenix had some contact with this person at one point in time. And I was able to get a phone number. Come to find out, the phone number was still good and everything. And so I'm like, hey, and I tell the detective sergeant that came out, I was like, hey, I'm gonna give it a shot and see if I can get a hold of this guy. You want me to do it, or you want one of the detectives? He's like, no, go for it. Just go ahead and do it. And just let us know, what you find out. I make the phone call. This guy picks up. Like, okay,
Wow.
So, long story short, so I find out this guy, he admits to me. I get him to tell me everything that happens in that room that night. He gets drunk, just completely plastered. He has drank himself into a stupor. At some point, he goes into the let's put it this way. He's having some adult entertainment on TV.
Okay. Right.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Get the beeper ready.
Right. Yeah. Right. At some point, he goes into the bathroom area, and he's, I guess, taking a shower, and he falls in the tub. He ends up breaking the handle of the railing. It was like a glass handle. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So he says, he was like, and through the phone, he's like sort of sheepishly admitting, like, yeah, well, I had broke it. He's like, you could probably see that, and I'm like, yeah, I see that. And he goes and he gets back in the bed, and he gets back to enjoying his adult entertainment. And apparently, he spent a lot of his time putting that in orifices that probably shouldn't have been. The whole time, I'm like, sure as, you pick a blanket, and there's like, this is like a glass. It's like serrated.
Oh
my God.
So I'm like, dude, are you injured? Yeah.
My guess is yes.
Yeah, I'm actually just leaving the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, so what you're telling me is that this blood that's all over is your blood. There's nobody else in the room with you? No, it's me. It was all me. He's like, I'm almost there. You want me to come back? Because he actually lived fairly close by, just on the Ahwatukee side. And I was like, yeah, that would be helpful if you could come back and just come back over here so you can. We need to corroborate your story. And and the detectives are they're pulling video and everything, and the manager is going over that with them, and they confirm that it's only him coming in and out of the room. And this guy comes up and he's walking very gingerly.
I can imagine.
Yeah, you think? Right.
He's just, the dude is walking very gingerly, and he extends his hand. I'm like, hey, bro, I'm good, man.
Hello. We'll just stick to waves.
Yeah, I had already informed the sergeant what happened and everything, and so when he comes up to try to shake my hand, I'm like, hey, bro, I'm good and everything. He beelines and just basically has to go around a pillar, and he is like hysterically laughing because he's just like, he couldn't keep a straight face. Now, the other guys, they don't know. I only told the supervisor, but
Yeah.
he had to walk away because he's literally crying. Because he's just like, oh, my God, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, man, I'm going to need you to have a conversation with one of our detectives because we have to confirm your story. Yep. Like, obviously, you understand what this looks like, And I was like, and the whole time I could not help it because I'm like standing like 6 feet away from the guy talking to him because I'm just like, oh, dude.
Yeah, that is a tale.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So
at the end, it wasn't a homicide.
Thank goodness, I guess.
It just looked like one.
Yeah.
I hope he recovered.
Yeah, I hope he did too. I never knew. I just know that they had civilly had to settle it all up and everything because there was a lot of damage to the room, and somebody had to pay for that damage. I mean, that's a heck of a cleaning bill.
So to all of our future guests, now you know. Like you probably can tell us,
Right.
Because that's a doozy.
Yeah.
Sir, I'll be honest. Yeah, you put old Captain Map to shame on that one. That's for sure.
It's going to be kind of hard to top that.
Yeah,
one.
that's what I say. I mean, goodness gracious.
Yeah, that's the condensed down version of the story, But
And you know what's funny?
Yeah,
Cops have tons of stories like that.
absolutely.
And they never say it. They never say anything because most people don't get it, right? Most people probably listening are going to go, how is that even funny? But we're all sitting here laughing because we've seen the end of the story is it's better than a homicide.
It's better than a homicide.
There you go.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean,
Right,
it's
right.
better than a homicide.
Right.
That guy
Yeah.
had a bad day, but
Right.
everyone's alive.
He
So
got medical assistance.
He
Yeah.
did.
There you go.
absolutely,
He got treated.
There you
They took care of him. Everything was stitched back in place.
there you go.
So, yeah, he was good.
All's well that ends well, I suppose. So.
So
But I'm bum.
right, Colonel. Just to bring it back a little bit, I do because to me the joy or maybe one of the positives we can get out of this podcast are those people that are looking at law enforcement, whether they're like the way I started. I kind of fell into it too. I never considered policing as a serious career.
Yeah.
I just like, oh, this is gonna be fun. Okay, let's go do it. But there's plenty of people out there that would be great here. And what do you say to those people that are on the fence or maybe never even considered it, but they're going to hear this episode? What do you say to those guys that are like, well, where do I even start? How do you get them convinced that DPS is a place? I mean, I could talk for hours about it, but
Yeah.
I'm curious what you have to say.
DPS is definitely a family environment. I mean, you got so many people here that are just like, legacy people, people, their fathers or their mothers or, cousins or brothers or aunts, uncles that have worked for the agency, and they still have generations of family members coming to work in this agency. I mean, that speaks volumes when you have family members that are coming to work for the same agency that you work for, because you think about, other industries and everything, a lot of times people are like, hey, I'm thinking about considering. No.
Yeah, don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't. Yeah. But, obviously you've got a lot of people that have been here that, when you hear their names, it's like, hey, didn't you have a father that worked here? Or didn't your brother work here? Like, that really does mean something, and like, and I always say that, your employees are your best recruiters.
Right.
And so that, again, it shows that, from that type of environment where you have, the opportunity of having your, family members that are telling you, probably a lot of really cool stories, but positive things about the organization. And the fact that, you take care of your family, your loved ones, you get a pension, we're still one of the few and only careers left where you can actually have an opportunity to get a pension for the rest of your life. That really is, I mean, that's huge. Sometimes I think people just don't understand how really rare that is and impactful that is, and how that actually can really, weigh heavily on your family's quality of life later on, and when you're looking further out and everything past that retirement, stage and everything, that you have something that's constantly coming in that's taking care of you every month for the rest of your life. It's a beautiful thing. And then if you retire early enough, you've got opportunities to make career 2, career 3, and career 4 if you wanted to.
Yeah. They'll call you back to be a chief.
That's right. Yeah, you get drugged back in. You just never know what's going to happen.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for being our inaugural episode. For all of our listeners out there, we hope this has been a learning experience and a great time. I know I've had fun.
Yep.
I'm sure the two of you have enjoyed this.
Yeah, absolutely.
We thank you for your leadership, and
Thank you.
just thank you for everything you're doing for the agency, and thank you for being here today.
I appreciate the invite. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of the first inaugural episode. I think there's probably a lot of things that people learned about me, lessons learned, lessons on not what to do in a hotel room, all those things. So, really, thank you again, and I think this is a fantastic deal that you guys are putting on here by allowing for employees to come in and be able to take part in this, to really get an understanding and learn about Arizona DPS and what we're doing and the things that we want to accomplish. This is fantastic. So thank you all for what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's a lot of stories to tell.
That's right.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, from all of us here at 7 Points, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next episode.